Time now for a business update, and I'm joined on the set by Brian Quinn. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Will.
Beginning with a look at the EU and Mexico trying to deepen trade ties.
Well, both the EU and Mexico have seen their trade agreements with the United States under threat since Donald Trump took office there. Talks on the US-EU deal known as the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP, have been frozen since Trump's election victory. On the Mexican side, Trump has promised to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement and build a wall along the border. Trade between Europe and Mexico is currently worth over 55 billion euros per year, both sides keen to expand that number. The EU wants to ensure labor and environmental standards first, but they're making it clear that the US market isn't the only game in town.
We are a big trader, in fact the biggest trader of the world, the European Union, so we also have a responsibility to make sure that the values, when it comes to good labor laws, when it comes to transparency, maintaining high standards, promoting fair conditions when it comes to labor and environment, are also protected in our trade agreements. And this we will do with the US when they are ready, but if they're not ready for the moment, we will continue to do it with other friends and partners.
And one of our top stories today, South Korea's presidential election. A big issue there, the control of the country's corporate conglomerates.
Well, there's some of the best-known companies in the world, Samsung, Hyundai, and LG, for example. In South Korea, these giant family-controlled businesses are known as chaebols, and they're in the hot seat as the country picks its next president. Former President Park Geun-hye was impeached and arrested on a bribery scandal involving chaebol bosses, and many voters are calling for an end to the system that allows them to dominate the economy. Our correspondents in Seoul have this report.
Moon Jae-in, a liberal former human rights lawyer, is favourite to replace Park when South Koreans go to the polls on May the 9th. Moon has vowed to take on the chaebol, which together account for 80% of the country's GDP. His message is resonating with the voters in the aftermath of the Park scandal, which also saw the arrest of Jae Lee, heir to South Korea's biggest company, Samsung.
Moon Jae-in acknowledges that the chaebol have contributed to South Korea's economic development, but he also recognizes that the system of cross-shareholdings that give them their dominance is not good for the country. He wants to reform the chaebol and build a fairer society.
Moon opposes the traditional practice of pardoning chaebol bosses convicted of corporate crimes and wants to end the cosy ties between chaebol families and politicians. His reforms are being spearheaded by Kim Sang-jo, a university professor who's nicknamed the chaebol sniper.
I'm certain that the chaebol bosses now know that they will end up in prison if they continue to behave as they have done in the past.
Major firms like Samsung and Hyundai have helped turn South Korea into the 11th biggest economy in the world. But amid pressure from voters, angry at the chaebol's influence, the country's experimenting with a new approach to business, such as encouraging young entrepreneurs. Yet, ironically, even these 18 creative economy centres dotted around the country are being run by several chaebol firms. A reminder that despite the public's appetite for reform, taking on South Korea's powerful conglomerates will be a long and difficult task.
And that election in South Korea, clearly important for the wider Asian economy. How are we seeing that markets react?
Well, the Kospi in Korea closed for trading on election day, but around the region, markets slowing down a bit after an enthusiastic reaction yesterday to Emmanuel Macron's victory in France. The Nikkei and the Shanghai Composite below the flat line, it looks like, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng is just up under 0.4. Let's take a look at some more of today's business headlines. Handbag maker Coach has agreed to buy rival company Kate Spade. The $2.4 billion deal ties together two top brands in the luxury goods sector as it struggles to lure younger consumers. Coach pointed specifically to Kate Spade's millennial customer base as motivation for the acquisition. Kate Spade stock jumped 8% on the news. Microsoft is launching a voice-controlled smart speaker to compete with Amazon's Echo model. The Invoke is expected to debut in the fall of this year, powered by Microsoft's Cortana digital assistant interface. The model will be manufactured by Samsung's Harman Kardon unit. And a former regular Fox News guest is calling on UK regulators to block Fox's planned purchase of British broadcaster Sky. Dr. Wendy Walsh appeared frequently on the O'Reilly Factor and says the deal would bring a culture of sexual and racial harassment to Britain. UK media watchdog Ofcom must approve the purchase before it can go through.
And finally, for business, Turkey has seen its tourism industry suffer recently, but there's a sector that's been plugging the gap, Brian.
Plugging the gap indeed. Medical tourism is holding up quite well, specifically for hair implants. Turkey is the #1 destination for Middle Eastern clients looking to fill in their thinning hairlines, with 300 clinics in Istanbul alone. That competition keeps prices comparatively low, with average operation costing around 12,000 euros. Last year, nearly 60,000 patients came to Turkey for hair implants.
It's interesting which countries develop the hair technology and which don't.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. I might have to make a business research, actually.
Brian Quinn with a roundup of the business